Hi, everyone. We're giving everybody a quick minute to be able to jump on, and we'll be starting at 1 minute past. Great. So good afternoon and welcome back to our next presentation from Adam Lalani. He's the head of IT at Worldwide Flight Services, and he'll do a presentation on do board members really understand the cyber risks their company face. But before we get started, just a couple of quick reminders. If you do want to ask any questions, please use the poll function, to the right of your viewing pane. You can ask any questions you want, and we'll pick them up on our Q&As after the presentation. If you haven't already, you can click on the theater mode button. I think it's either under your viewing pane or it's the top right to watch it in full screen, just for a better viewing experience. And with that, I'm just going to mute myself, turn off my camera, and Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Will. Hi, everyone. I do enjoy these virtual presentations a lot because in the old days, well, a year and a half ago, you'd always be worried about tripping up on the way up to a stage. So I don't have to worry about any of that now. So anyway, let's get into the presentation. I'm also looking forward to the questions because I'm quite interested to see what you're all thinking afterwards. So a little bit about me. I've worked in a number of different industries over the last 25 years, so retail, shipping, commodities trading, road transport, fuel distribution, supply chain of various types, warehousing, and also local government. So I've had quite a broad range of experiences and got to work with many different leaders and different types of leaders. So hopefully that will come through in the presentation and will be, we'll create some thought-provoking questions for you. So let's just talk a little bit about risk. According to Denton's, cybersecurity is a risk that is as significant as any other critical, strategic, operational, financial, and compliance type of risk under a board's area of remit. Now, this is something that the boards don't necessarily accept or understand and like to just sort of frame things like cybersecurity as just an IT area of risk. But I very much believe that this does belong at board level. So just talking a little bit more about risk now. Before a board can actually try and deal with the kind of cybersecurity risks that we're all facing these days, they actually need to understand the implications of those risks. Now, of course, it can be as complex as we choose to make it, coming from the IT field, but, we should actually be trying very much to not make this complex, to help them understand what these things actually mean in the real world, so that they know what those risks are and what exists. Now, from company to company, this is going to vary quite substantially, as you might expect, because there's just different services, systems, platforms, etc., that people are using. So the next question is, do they understand them? So now you've made them aware of these risks, do they understand what they actually mean? Now, broadly speaking, these are the key areas of risks that should be thought about at that board level from a cybersecurity perspective. So things like ransomware, I think we're all very, very familiar with what that means and the implications of that. Phishing attacks, very common. Data leakage, and this can happen in a variety of different ways, as we all know. Hacking, and the enemy within, insider threat. So they, again, depending on your organization, depending where you work, some of these will be more relevant to other ones. So it's not a one size fits all approach. And insider threat could be far more likely to happen in one type of organization than it might happen in another one. So this should be straightforward. Surely it is. One would hope that it is. But no, we're wrong. Like, it's not as straightforward as that, unfortunately. So we've seen in the news, I mean, one that springs to mind, which was a massive ransomware attack last year, was Hackney Council, that even with the best will in the world, all kinds of governance in place around these particular threats, the impact is still so substantial. Like, if you are finding yourself in a position where you're unable to operate as a result of these cybersecurity risks. So the thing is that from the idea, from the concept of cybersecurity risks to actually being successfully held ransom, like Hackney Council was, there are so many different technology touch points that might fail, that will lead to a successful breach. And the thing is that, have you, as someone from the IT side of things, actually identified what these touch points are, and how on earth do you identify them? So let's just give you a little scenario for a moment here. I join a new organization, which, funnily enough, I joined Worldwide Flight Services a couple of months ago. But this is not a scenario from here. But with the team, we went together and went through the current risk register and updated it as well. But let's say the risk register uncovers things like out-of-life switches that perhaps we can't do further firmware updates to, or manage them in the same way that you could do with modern switches. You've got exposed web services. Now, often, with the best will in the world, that the underlying technology of a lot of those web services, especially if you're using things like Apache Tomcat, they're extremely dangerous. There's many vulnerabilities appearing on a very frequent basis. You've got unpatched systems, which you can never be fully up to date because you've got patching cycles that involve having to test before you can deploy them to several thousand systems. You might have a lack of resilience in whatever that may be, whether that's servers, networking, people even. These are all risks that can lead to an impact on your cybersecurity strategy. Again, unsegregated VLANs could be one. That's one from elsewhere where I've worked that was a big thing. So just imagine that you find yourself in this magical world, or awful, terrible world, where you've uncovered all of this stuff. It's there, you've identified it, it's on your risk register. I go with that list of my top 5, top 10 risks to the board and say, look, I need, let's say, £1 million to go and address this stuff. But it's not exciting to them, right? You're not coming and talking about robotics, blockchain, analytics, like all the buzzwords that these people pick up in the press or like in movies, and then expect to see from you, right? You know, IT is not as glamorous as that. It's not like what we see in Hollywood. So this stuff's boring, right? No one will take you seriously, right? They're going to say, this guy Adam, he just wants to spend a ton of money. Why do we need to spend that money, Adam? Things work. We've never had an attack before. Why would it happen now? Like, you know, you're just being dramatic. And in fact, actually saying that, there was somewhere that I was based before, but I better not say where it was, where I was actually accused of being dramatic when it came to a discussion around resilience and the ability to be able to recover from a disaster. So eventually I managed to win that particular battle, and thank goodness I did, because we were actually able to recover from a ransomware attack as a result. So the drama was worth it in the end. So beyond that, you've got still more objections. Okay, so it's like, I don't understand, like what you're explaining is so complex. What's a VLAN? You know, I don't know what a switch is. You know, why do we need like additional capacity for something? They just don't understand if you frame things in a technical way. Attacks nowadays, oh, they're so sophisticated. How are we going to stop them? Whatever we do is just not going to be enough. Attacks are targeted. They specifically chose, and I don't mean to single out here Hackney Council, but they specifically chose Hackney. That's who they wanted to get. You know, they had some beef with them. Why is security so expensive? You know, it costs £20 to buy antivirus in PC World or wherever, like, you know, on Amazon or wherever people go and like have a look. Aren't we better than our competitors over the road? These are the sort of things that I have often heard as like objections to being or putting ourselves in a better place to actually deal with these cybersecurity risks. These are all like real quotes that have come from board level members in the past. So what happens in the end is that the action that we take is often reactive. So there'll be things outside of the organization that will push us, spur us on to actually try and remedy some of these situations. So I mean, a big one of those is compliance. So, you know, I've just mentioned two frameworks there that we're no doubt all aware of. There's obviously many more depending on the industry that you're based in, that you need to comply and adhere to certain things that make it necessary that an investment has to be done to address your cybersecurity risks. Another big one, and I promise this will be the last time I mention, actually no, it's the second to last time I'm going to mention Hackney, because I worked in my previous role for 2 London councils. So I had like a bird's eye view of the unfolding situation and the reaction and the fear that spread amongst other colleagues of mine when Hackney suffered. It sometimes means that people operating in the same area, the same industry as you, have to be breached, have to have been compromised from a cybersecurity perspective before things are taken seriously. I cannot explain how much effort, time, money was spent remediating things that 2 weeks earlier wouldn't have been remediated in those 2 London councils that I mentioned a few moments ago. It's a very serious example. And also similarly, when I worked in the oil and gas space several years ago, there were also other breaches that led to the organization that I was in taking steps to try and close the gaps that we had. So that Saudi Aramco example is the one that, you know, sent all the cockroaches running in the oil and gas space. Big one that we know about as well is the NHS WannaCry attacks from several years ago. And of course, my favorite, well, on your least favorite example is Hackney Council. This should be the last time that they get mentioned now. So how do you like navigate around this situation? Like, how do you know, we're aware of all these like awful things, people that don't want to take action for the number of reasons that we've already covered. How do we get the board to take these things seriously and understand that, okay, whilst these might have popped up on an IT risk register, these are actually risks to the business, not just to the IT teams. So according to the NCSC, 72% of large companies have suffered a breach or an attack. That is a massive number. In many cases, these things don't actually come out and we don't get to hear about them, but people have confidentially responded to, to that. Then, okay, I'm getting hurried up by Will, so I need to bounce through this. So 27% of companies, they don't have any formal cyber security policy in place. It's pretty serious numbers when you look at it that way. So you need to identify what's valuable to your organization without all the jargon. So if I lose my phone, the things that are on that phone that are important to me in my data is my data, my photos, things like that. A lot of other stuff, could be backed up in the cloud. But the stuff that's really important is the stuff that I've created myself. So I need to protect that. So to help them understand, you need to look at this from a business impact analysis angle, so that you can frame the risks in a way that board members can relate to, so that you can build a case to do these four lovely things here, and help to close the gap. So this is here's one I made earlier. This is a redacted business impact analysis I'd done several years ago. Looks really boring, as you can see, but these are the questions that this particular exercise will answer. Who, what, how, amount of money you're going to lose, how long, what's the worst time. These are all the things that need to be answered. And then what happens is that you will be able to plot them in a visual format. And when you put this in front of a board, you're going to start seeing perhaps like the checkbooks opening. So this way you're able to assign proper priorities in a visual way, so that you can explain what systems and services are going to be down, and the impact, and how likely it is that it will be visually. So you need to be reporting quite regularly. This is not like just a one-off exercise. You should be doing this all the time. And you have to explain what will happen if these threats are not treated. So there are a number of different things that you can do to help mitigate against these risks. I'm not going to go through all of them, and a lot of them will obviously stand to reason, and will make sense to you. They're all key. There are others, but can't fit everything on a slide. So board needs to understand, we've talked about that, they need to not only talk the talk, they need to obviously walk the walk as well. Should be a people first approach. It should be open without blame if things go wrong, and be realistic about how you're going to treat these risks. There's a number of ways to handle these things, but obviously go with the highest priority stuff first and work with layered defenses, and keep reviewing and assessing. So very quickly, you need to be able to actually understand what an incident looks like. So in order to do that, you need to have an incident management plan. You need to run drills. You shouldn't blame people if things go wrong, and you need to pick up on the lessons learned. Extremely important. This is not just a box ticking exercise. So you don't just go and buy a product off the shelf and leave it for the next 2-3 years. You also need to know who is actually going to work with these products or services that you're going to bring in to help mitigate against those risks. So I'm going to have to sort of jump a bit through this, but you need to bake security in when you're dealing with projects. Often it's an afterthought, and then you have to react to those things. There's different ways to look at this. I like Wardley mapping very much. Here's an example of one, and how you would design like a security service. Check it out, Wardley mapping, extremely useful tool. We can just jump through the project stuff. If you don't act, 37% of financial organizations have had data breaches, and then you can see the rest in these other sectors. It's dangerous stuff. We rely on these things. This stuff is important for us, for all of us, not just in the company that you work for. So to sum up, who is responsible? I say it's everyone, particularly the board. We need to make clear what the risks are, and then we can see what our appetite towards it is. And what do we have in place to deal with those threats? Are other people around us doing this better? Does that give them an advantage? They're going to get more business than us as a result. So all very important questions. Hopefully we might have 1 or 2 minutes left for questions. Had to scoot through.
I apologize for having to push you. I could tell you've jumped through a few of your slides because of it, but I did want to open up the floor to questions. We have 3 minutes for a quick Q&A. I do have 2 questions as far as I can see. If you have any questions, just put them in the polls or even in the chat. I can pick them up, but I'll just go through the first question if it's fine with you.
Go for it.
So the first one I can see is, how should I convince board members of the real risks we are vulnerable to when they only want a real life example of an attack?
Well, it's an excellent question. I mean, the thing is that what I would say is, that when you get in your car and you drive from A to B, you don't expect to be in an accident. You hope that you're not, but you have insurance. And it needs to be put that same way, is that, look, this is the worst that can happen. Sure, it might not happen, but do you want to take that chance? Can we afford it? You have to remember that if you've warned them about these things and they fail to act, they could be out of a job, depending on the industry that you're in. So that's what I would say.
Let me just have a quick look. That was a fantastic answer, by the way. The next one is, at what point should I consider employing an IT person to do all this for my business?
It depends on.
I imagine this is for more of an SMB than a larger company.
I mean, if you're a smaller organization, then it might be perhaps better to outsource that particular function. So there are a number of different organizations that can help you and actually help you flesh out what all these risks are, and help you understand what you can do to treat them. So if I was in a smaller organization, then that is probably what I would do. I would just outsource that particular function and then manage it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the last one that just has come through, do you think cybersecurity sits solely in IT?
Absolutely not. The thing is as I said at the beginning, IT is not necessarily seen as an exciting field. It is now from the transformative sort of stuff, but often the things that are most dangerous to your organization are all the legacy applications, legacy hardware, the stuff that you can't get rid of that you've had for 10, 15, 20 years. That's the stuff that's dangerous, and being able to help people understand that there's often severe risks as a result of that aging technology. That is really, really important.
Great. Well, with that, I think we should wrap up. So we're keeping pace because we want to keep pace around here. I want to thank you so much, Adam. That was a great presentation and some great answers to this Q&A. if everybody wants to head back, we have 2 more agendas due to start in the next 5 minutes. You can just head back to the agenda and you can choose any of those 2 presentations. And then after that, at 3 o'clock, we have the exclusive interview with CISO from SolarWinds. It would be great to jump on that one. But with that, thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you for having me. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
See you
Thank
all.
you. Bye.
Bye.